Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we have had so much fun trying out all of the features like Q&As and polls that let us be really creative and engage with our audience. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome to episode 67 of Podcast Royal. The Cambridges are coming to Boston, the Commonwealth Games are underway, and legal rulings about the royal family continue to make headlines. Plus, we've got a fantastic interview with Eloise Moran, author of the Lady Di Lookbook, what Diana was trying to tell us through her clothes. All right here.
Welcome back to episode 67. How are you, my friend? And what are you into this week?
Hey, yeah, I'm doing good. We were just chatting before we started recording about how it's just been kind of a crazy week. There's been a lot going on, and I have not even had a second to really put thought into what I've been into this week. And, when I share something like that, I like for it to be thoughtful and something that has really kind of impacted my week. So I'm going to let you talk about your week this time.
You sure you're ready for that? So, listeners, it has been a really difficult week for me and my family. It's been a tough one. We lost an immediate family member to suicide, and I think maybe in another world I would have balked at sharing the cause of death, but I'm not going to, because I'm, first of all, not ashamed, and second of all, want to make awareness that it happens, and it's painful and it's hurtful, but it's so many complex emotions at once. But I want to honor this loved one. He was and I, before I get emotional and wreck this entire episode, he was an absolutely 1 in a million person, and I will love him and remember him fondly forever. And I would in this is obviously not what I'm into, but this is what I want to highlight during my time. So I'd like to, if I can, just take a moment of silence for him here and ask for your prayers, candidly, for my family. We are really struggling. So I'm just going to give him a moment of silence that he deserves. It has been a rough week with no let up in sight. I beg of all of you to take care of yourselves, honor your mental health, and tell your family and friends that you love them every day, because it sounds cliche at this point to say that you never know when it will be the last time, but sometimes you really never know when it will be the last time. So we honor you, we love you, we'll miss you, and thank you for allowing me this time to recognize you.
Well, I, certainly appreciate you sharing your heart, Rachel, and bringing awareness to that. And, I knew about this before we started recording, of course, and, my prayers are with you and your family. And, it's just really heartbreaking, even when it's someone that you don't know. Your heart breaks for the people that are impacted, and your heart breaks for that individual. And so I'm just so sorry to hear about your news. And you guys are, of course, in my prayers.
Yeah, thank you. And Jessica, I want to call you out. You know, this we found out about this on Friday night, and it's Tuesday as we record this, and you have been so very there for me, offering to bring meals, offering to come over, offering to, I mean, you've just been fantastic. And I'll see you tomorrow in person on Wednesday, which I can't wait for. And I just want to call out your amazing friendship, and you know, I just encourage everyone to, when you ask the question, how are you, add a really at the end of that sentence, because I think we've become so accustomed to just saying, I'm fine, you know, I'm good. But I'll be honest with you and say that with this family member, I missed this. I had no idea. So you know, I'm not going to blame myself, but I am going to say that I wish I had maybe probed a little bit more. So, at the risk of this podcast, the good thing we've got a really lighthearted, fun interview because that we're going to turn the ship around. But I can't put anything that I'm into in that spot over recognizing what the tragedy that just happened in my family. So that being said, I said what I needed to say. So we're going to 180 pivot and we're going to talk about fashion. So what is your fashion pick of the week?
Yeah, you know, I wasn't really sure what my fashion pick of the week was going to be either. And I actually, so there was some great fashion this week, and I feel like I do tend to default to some of my favorite royals over and over again. So I've been trying to switch it up the past few weeks and do something different. And I just came across this photo on my phone before we started recording. And so, in an effort to highlight some different royals this week, I'm going to call out Queen Letizia of Spain. So
Okay.
she attended, let's see, I'm looking at this article right now. She presented awards at the Atlantida Mallorca Film Festival. I believe it was on Sunday. And she wore a black, like satin slip dress, and it had kind of a high neckline. It was cut in on her shoulders, so sleeveless. And let me tell you, she is in the gym doing some arm workouts because she
Yeah,
has
she is fit.
awesome, yeah, awesome muscle definition there, a great tan. You know, she's got her hair down. She's got, it looks like they might be like small diamond hoop earrings. And it's just that it's a simple black satin slip dress. But you know, sometimes those classic looks are really the best. I believe her specific dress is from And Other Stories, and it's sold out.
Mm.
But you can find, of course, tons of black slip dresses online. So just a good, you know, classic, can't go wrong look. And that's what I'm going with this week.
Well, we know And Other Stories because Kate wears them sometimes. So that's a
She does.
familiar brand.
Yes.
Speaking of Kate, I liked her nautical look. She was sailing with Team Great Britain over the weekend, and I loved her white shorts and just how she played the nautical theme up.
So
So
I did
I'll
too, and
call
that
that
was
out.
definitely a runner up for me. And I thought about going with that one. And I was also just sitting there thinking about how amazing the summer weather must be over there where she is, because we could never get away with wearing a sweater in
Yeah,
July or
it must
August
have
here.
cooled down significantly from the heat wave they were experiencing a couple of weeks ago. So I thought she looked great. Okay, so let's move into the royal rundown. So we debated a little bit about whether to talk about this. And so okay, here we go. Right off the top, we want to say another congratulations to Pippa Middleton Matthews and her family, whose third baby, which is a girl, we have learned was named Rose. So, which is a beautiful name. So I personally think that, and you and I talked about this last week, that the choice of the name Rose is stirring up all kinds of resurgence of the Rose Hanbury alleged affair, including some new levels of disgusting rumors surrounding William. We want to let you listeners know that obviously we are aware of these. Our finger is on the pulse of this. Listeners, if you're following the Royals even a little bit and are on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or alive, basically, you know what we're talking about here. We're not going to address the hashtag Prince of fill in the blank rumors here because I told you this last week. We're going to harken back to our conversation with William's biographer Robert Jobson. It was in episode 60, so you can go back and listen to the full interview for yourselves to see what we mean. But at one point in the interview, Robert says, had William actually cheated on Kate, whether with Rose or with whoever else is involved, Kate would never be able to look at William with that light in her eyes that she does. And Robert has seen that for himself in person. So I agree with that. I mean, if you were cheated on, or if your husband is doing these alleged things that William is doing, you're not, or at least me, that I'm just speaking for myself, I guess. I couldn't smile at my husband with that pure innocent smile that she gives him. And so we're going to stick to the facts here and not entertain those rumors today, even though we are unfortunately aware of them. How could we miss them? So if you are looking for salacious and likely untrue and unfounded gossip, try another show and we'll see you later. But
Yeah,
that's all
I mean,
I have to say about that.
I'm in agreement with you, Rachel. I don't think we would see her looking at him the way that she does. I mean, they feel happier than ever before. We're seeing them out with the kids. We're seeing them on vacation together. I honestly think the name Rose that Pippa chose had no relation at all. And I think it's further proof that there's nothing going on there.
I agree. I
They're not
agree.
going to let rumors get in the way of, I mean, it could be like a cherished family name of, either the Middletons or Pippa's husband's family. I mean, and I'm sure she told family what she was going to name the baby, and I'm sure Kate loved it and had no problem with it at all. So,
Yeah, let that be further proof that there is no there there. You know what I mean?
totally
So
agree.
there's that. So we addressed it. We're not unaware of it, but we're not also not going there. So
Well, speaking of the Cambridges, listeners might have a chance to see them in person before the end of the year if you are American like us. So, we have known for a while that the next Earthshot Prize will be held in the US, and Rachel and I have been taking guesses on where exactly in the US the event will be hosted. Listeners might remember last year's Earthshot Prize was held in their home base of London. And we were super excited to learn that this year they've chosen, drumroll, Boston.
yeah.
So, Rachel, you've been to Boston. It's on my list of places to visit. But I thought this was a really interesting choice for this event. So, to me, it feels like a great location to host the Royals. Even though neither of us guessed this one, I don't think when we were
I
talking about
definitely
it.
did not.
I know I didn't either. So I think it's a good all American city. We've got a lot of the historic colonial architecture. We've got a pretty famous baseball team there. And it's only 20 minutes from Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I don't know if that was a coincidence. I will say I couldn't help but think of the Boston Tea Party when I heard this news.
Yeah.
But
There's some obvious like Revolutionary War ties there, but that we'll look past that.
And there's actually another U.S. historical tie here that I thought was interesting. So I was reading that Earthshot, it's actually named after JFK's moonshot, which was his 10-year plan, John F. Kennedy's 10-year plan to land on the moon. And the JFK Library Foundation, located in Boston, will be one of the partners hosting the event. And the day that they revealed Boston as their chosen location this year for Earthshot was actually the anniversary of the moon landing. So, a lot of reasons floating around here why Boston makes a really great location for this event. On their visit, they will, of course, recognize the 5 winners of Earthshot Prize, and they plan to highlight Boston for some of the work that they're doing to combat climate change. So, really fun, exciting stuff going on
Yeah.
there.
Well, I think you nailed it. I think that the moonshot connection is exactly why they chose Boston. And moonshot, earthshot, William has said before that he was inspired by JFK's moonshot. And so just kind of all makes sense. And I hope we get some Cambridges in Cambridge. That can't, no, somebody's had to have thought of that, right? But, and
Surely.
I don't know. I mean, Boston in December is pretty cold, but I would be willing to make the trip if someone would pay me to write a story about it. So just putting that out there in the universe. But switching gears, longtime royal followers will recognize the name Tiggy Legg Burke from the 1990s. She was William and Harry's nanny then, and a disturbing allegation about her, which we won't repeat here because it's been proven false, was apparently how BBC's Panorama and host Martin Bashir were able to secure that bombshell 1995 interview with Princess Diana that ultimately ended she and Charles' marriage for good. Of course, the couple had been separated since 1992 and finally divorced in 1996. So Tiggy Legg Burke, who is now known as Alexandra Pettifer, she's been married, and Tiggy was a nickname, and Alexandra is her given name, received a substantial sum of money recently from the BBC over the false allegations and an apology, which she rightly deserves.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild that that has been taken this long to come around and have that information out there.
Yeah, nearly 30 years, 27 years later.
So, switching gears really quick again, here we go with our next story. Rachel, I am so exhausted hearing about Sussex court cases. I'm just going to admit that. I feel like it's almost difficult to keep up with all the stuff that has been going on in court. And I just wonder if there'll be a time when we don't have a legal battle going on. But we did have an update regarding Prince Harry and his security protection in the UK. So, a little backstory in early 2020, I don't know if I'm saying this right. Ravik, is that how you say that?
I think so. It's an
So,
acronym.
it is, yes. It's the Committee for the Protection of Royals and Public Figures. Ravik determined Harry should no longer have an automatic right to UK police security, following him stepping down from his public duties and moving outside of the UK. So this means that he could still get protection, but it would be more of like a case by case basis rather than an assumed right to security whenever he needed it or wanted it. So, Harry's got his own US security team, but his argument is that the US security team doesn't have the same level of security intelligence in the UK and essentially can't act on a threat in the UK the same way that UK police are able to, since obviously it's not their country. And for those reasons, he wants an automatic right to security when he visits. So, Ravik, they do occasionally meet and discuss who should qualify for this type of security if, a change occurs in status. And basically, they believe he no longer meets their qualifications under his current status. They don't think that he should get his way because he's related to the Queen. They don't feel like it works that way for other royals. So, we've talked on the pod before about how Her Majesty does have other grandchildren who don't get this type of security. Long story short, he has been given an opportunity to challenge their decision, and we'll continue to wait to hear more about the outcome in the coming months as to whether or not he will actually be given this right to security when he's in the UK. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I feel like, and I know we're going to talk about this later in the show, but I feel like we have a possible other lawsuit that could happen. I mean, I have no confirmation of this with the Tom Bauer book. I mean, that could
Right.
happen too. So I feel like the never-ending legal battles continue, but there's multiple legal battles happening. We'll talk about more controversies later in the show, but yeah, I mean, I hope. I mean, look, he's given the opportunity to challenge it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm not saying that he shouldn't challenge it. I just feel like you know, we we just have so much going on in the legal world with the Sussexes lately. It's a little bit hard to keep up with.
Indeed. Well, let's talk about something lighthearted for a moment, shall we? It would not be a Cambridge kid birthday without a photo from Mom Kate. George's ninth birthday on July 22nd did not disappoint in that regard. We only got one photo, which is, again, more than enough, but it was an adorable photo of George in which I think he looks so much like his dad William at that age that it is mind blowing. So I'm wondering what you thought of George's photo this year.
I totally agree. He does look like William and he looks very grown up. I mean, we've gotten to see him a few times recently during the Platinum Jubilee and at Wimbledon. And, he just seems so, I don't know, just more mature lately. He's getting to go on these trips with his parents and, these engagements. And it was a great picture. He looks really happy and looks like a little mini William.
He does.
So, all right, Rachel, speaking of cities, the Cambridges and the Royals, really, I guess, are visiting. I'm excited to say that the Royals are in Birmingham this week. But unfortunately, it is not Birmingham, Alabama. It is the other Birmingham across the pond in our sister country or cousin country or mother country or whatever it's called. They're in England, and the weather looks to be a bit milder over there than the scorching temps we've had in the US lately. So I don't think that they're wishing they were in Birmingham, Alabama, but
Probably not.
Birmingham, England is hosting the Commonwealth Games this year. And listeners, if you are wondering what exactly the Commonwealth Games are, think of it as sort of an Olympics event for countries in the Commonwealth. So it's held every 4 years. It's also known as the Friendly Games, which I think is kind of a cute name. And I believe the last one was held in 2018 on the Gold Coast of Australia, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought this was a fun little thing. Last October, ahead of this year's event, the Queen sent a baton from Buckingham Palace to travel all 72 countries in the Commonwealth, with the final destination being in Birmingham. So during the opening ceremony, Prince Charles read a message that Her Majesty had written and placed inside of this baton. I'm not going to read the whole message here, but I've got an excerpt that I'll share with you. So she wrote, "Over the years, the coming together of so many for the Friendly Games has created memorable shared experiences, established long-standing relationships, and even created some friendly rivalries. But above all, they remind us of our connection with one another, wherever we may be in the world, as part of the Commonwealth family of nations." So the Commonwealth Games date back to 1930, when it was called the British Empire Games. At the opening ceremony this year, of course, we saw Prince Charles and Camilla and Edward and Sophie, also known as the Earl and Countess of Wessex. And then we also saw a few more royals this week. So William, Catherine, and Princess Charlotte made an appearance in Birmingham. And Charlotte got a little tour and was able to meet some of the athletes. And, I really love this, Rachel, because it reminded me of Prince George's outing at Wimbledon. It seems like the Cambridges are, they're trying to take the kids out to some cool, fun events this summer. And I don't know, expose them to some different cultural parts of the UK. And I don't know, maybe they're rewarding them for working hard during the school year. I don't know what they're doing, but I feel like a lot of times the kids get to accompany them to engagements that may be a little bit boring for kids, and they've got to mind their manners and, not misbehave. And I think it's great to see William and Catherine getting the kids out at some of these more fun events and making it more enjoyable for them. So I really loved that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I loved seeing Charlotte today in her little braids and her just little, she's just such a beautiful little girl.
Yeah, absolutely. She had that really cute little black and white striped dress on, and she looked really, really happy and excited to be there.
Absolutely. It's her first solo outing with her parents. So we've seen George do solo outings. I don't think we've seen Louis do solo outings yet, but this is Charlotte's first. And so it was great to see her.
Can I just interject here for a second? I just want to point out the video of Charlotte and William on Instagram. Charlotte was in polka dots. I feel like Kate dressed her.
I noticed that too. I wasn't even going to say anything, but God love it. She was in freaking polka dots, but that's okay. Charlotte looked, she looked, is it weird to call a 7-year-old stunningly beautiful? But she looked absolutely radiant.
Yeah, for sure. She did.
I love that. Yeah, as you said, they were in a video, William and Charlotte, wishing the Lionesses, soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, England's women's football team, good luck. And then, of course, today with her parents at the Commonwealth Games, today's Tuesday, which I said is her first solo royal outing with William and Kate. So, doing a 180 here from adorable to controversial. Here we go again with Charles and the donations that he is accepting for his charities. What is going on? Controversy continues to surround Prince Charles and charitable donations. This time, it is reported he accepted a $1.2 million charity donation from Osama bin Laden's family. And this wasn't in the 1990s or pre 9/11. This was in 2013 and came from one of bin Laden's half brothers. Despite objections from key advisors, the Prince of Wales accepted the donation to the Prince of Wales Charitable Fund. So this is but the latest. I feel like we talk about Harry and Meghan in court. I feel like
Yeah.
we talk about this all the time. Charles and his scandals surrounding his charitable foundations. This is but the latest in scandals surrounding Charles and his charities. What is going on here? Who is in charge here? And if it's Charles, again, I'm a little worried about the leadership. At like $1.2 million is a great amount of money, but I'm sorry if someone from Osama bin Laden's family was even me trying to give me personally $1.2 million, I would turn it away because there's just
Mhm.
too much baggage that comes along with that, you know? And so I don't know what's going on here.
I agree. Got that icky feeling that goes along with it. And I did see this headline, and I was thinking the same thing. We keep this kind of stuff keeps coming up, and it's like I feel like you know they keep trying to like justify it or say, oh, they didn't break any rules or whatever, and we're trying to say like, well, maybe it was okay, but now this, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see how you justify this one, and I haven't dug into the story too much yet, but it doesn't feel good to
No,
hear about
and
that.
no, and Charles's charities are not so cash strapped that $1.2 million from the bin Ladens, like that's
Well,
not going
what's
to make or break.
driving this? I mean, what's behind accepting a donation like that?
I don't know. I mean, again, like his charities have more than, I mean, so much money coming into it. We just talked about, I think it was a $3.1 million donation a couple of weeks ago on this show. And so again, even if someone came to me personally, and I certainly don't have millions of dollars, and said, here's a $1.2 million donation from the bin Ladens just for you, I'd say you can take that right back.
Mhm.
And um, I don't understand. And it's also a little troubling that according to the articles I've read, which I think the one that I read that said this was from People, which is a source that I trust, that key advisors said don't take the money. It's again, there's too much baggage associated with this, and he did it anyway. So at least somebody is saying don't do this, but he pressed on, and that's a little troublesome too.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll get more out of this story, if there'll be some digging into this, or if more will come to light here, because I feel like there's a lot of questions being raised, and I feel like people aren't going to let this one slide like maybe they did the others,
Yeah, I don't know. Something is amiss. And again, it troubles me for his future leadership.
for sure. So, another big topic that's been circulating among royal watchers the past week is Tom Bower's new book, Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War of the Windsors, which covers a lot of details on the Sussexes, especially Meghan Markle. So, Tom Bower is a writer and former journalist with the BBC. He's written several books, and most recently, he has decided to dig into the drama of the royal family and the Sussexes. And he said in an interview recently that his decision to write this book came after the Oprah interview, which we all remember very well. So, a lot is being talked about in this book, from Meghan before she knew Prince Harry to Prince Harry introducing her to his friends. And I'm not going to dig into the details of the book here because You can actually order it and read it yourself, or you can find excerpts online from the book. And I actually have not had a chance to read it myself yet. So I'm kind of hesitant to comment until I do. But I did want to mention it here. And I'm wondering, Rachel, have you read the book, or do you have any thoughts on the book, or Tom Bauer as a biographer or an
Well,
or an author? I don't know if he's a biographer. He's an author though.
he's a biographer, yeah. So he's a veteran biographer. He's pretty well respected. I've not read the book, but I feel like I have, because I feel like I've written umpteen stories for Marie Claire about excerpts from the book, and there are many. They are explosive. The allegations are, I mean, it just it paints both of the Sussexes in a very negative light, but in particular Megan. And there's just really not a kind word to be said. I haven't read the book in totality. I am hearing that the Sussexes will not be commenting because twofold. Number one, Harry's own book, his memoir, is due out by the end of the year. That has been confirmed that it will be here in time for the holiday market. So in time for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of the holidays at the end of the year. And secondly, Omid Scobie is writing a new book. And I have a feeling that if I if I were a betting woman, I would say that Omid's new book will likely refute a lot of the claims that were raised in Tom Bauer's book. But it is, I mean, it's a smear campaign, to be honest with you. It's bad.
Wow.
So
Well, I've read a few of the excerpts myself, but I don't think I've read as much as you have. So I may look into ordering that one. And I feel like, I try to read a lot of the books
right.
that come out, especially since we podcast on it. But this has been a busy summer, and I haven't gotten around to this one yet.
Well, and it just came out in the US like a week ago. So you're not too far behind. But if you all do, this is not a shameless plug to go click on my stories, but if you do want to see a lot of excerpts from Tom Bauer's book, then check out Marie Claire, because we've been, not just me, but my colleagues at Marie Claire have been covering it pretty extensively. And it's you have to go heavy on the allegedlys, the reportedlys, because there's some really damning stuff in there. But I have not read it cover to cover, but I've read a lot of excerpts from it. So I fully expect Harry's. Well, I don't know if Harry's book will directly address the Tom Bauer stuff, because I read that Harry's book was completed, like the interviews for it were completed at like the turn of the year. So like, December into January time. But I definitely think that Omid's next book will cover some of what was said in Tom Bauer's book. So, our final news item in the Royal Rundown this week: Her Majesty has arrived at her favorite spot in the world, Balmoral, for summer vacation. And she got a piece of good news while she was there. Speaking of royals in court, we're back in court with this. Following a legal challenge from The Guardian for her late husband Philip's will to become public, it is official. Philip's will is going to remain secret due to what is being called exceptional circumstances. Now, in the UK, wills are usually public record after someone's death, but it has been practiced for over a century for the wills of royal family members to be sealed. And this is according to reporting from People. So on the matter of Philip, judges said, quote, "It is true that the law applies equally to the royal family, but that does not mean that the law produces the same outcomes in all situations. These circumstances are, as we have said, exceptional." So it will remain sealed. Of course, rumors persist that people were paid in the will that might surprise you. We'll just leave it there. But we will never know. And I actually think that's a good thing. I think we've talked about this before, that there are just some things that should be respected and that are not our business. And that, I believe, is one of them.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, well, let's go into segment 3, which is our fantastic interview with Eloise Moran. She's so adorable, so much fun. Let's get into it. Today on the show, we have the dynamic Eloise Moran, whose book, The Lady Di Lookbook, what Diana was trying to tell us through her clothes, is just about the most gorgeous book I own. It's out now and it's fantastic. So, a little about her. You might know her as the creator of Lady Di Revenge Looks, which has been featured everywhere from The New Yorker to Elle to the Wall Street Journal. She is a London born, LA based fashion writer and is the very proud owner. I think this is so cool of an original Virgin Atlantic sweatshirt Princess Diana herself once wore. That gives me goosebumps. Eloise, welcome to the show and congratulations on this first book of yours. That's huge.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yes.
So first off, I want to know, how did you come up with this incredible idea for a book?
So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I have the Instagram account Lady Di Revenge Looks. And I started that account in 2018. And my intention at the time was just to document Princess Diana's best post-divorce revenge outfits, which was actually inspired by my own breakup of a marriage that I was going through at the very young age of 25. So that was how that started. And I think from there, I was one of the people in my generation who kind of really was getting to know Diana as we have done over the last few years. And I was just kind of like fascinated by her. So I think naturally that progressed to writing a book about her. And it's kind of, it's much more than an extension of the Instagram, but it keeps the same kind of tone and humor as the Instagram account does.
It does. Yeah, you can definitely see the through line between the Instagram and the book. And it just all sounds very much like you, which I appreciate always. So, you say that what Diana couldn't express verbally, she expressed through her clothes. This, of course, still continues today with current royals, thinking right now of Kate. This might be too much for one question, but overall, what was Diana trying to tell us through her clothes? What were some of the messages she was trying to send?
I think ultimately, because obviously that is a giant question, and there are so many different outfits, and each of them perhaps are kind of saying slightly different things. But I think ultimately, rather than kind of what she was trying to say through her clothes with the way she dressed, I think she was kind of really trying to communicate her feelings in each given moment. Because if you think about it, the princess in many ways was kind of gagged. She wasn't able to speak to the public the way, people who aren't a part of that family or the institution can. So I think you see her kind of trying, I think at the beginning it's little cries for help, which you can see obviously in the famous sheep sweatshirt by Warm and Wonderful. And then later I think it became kind of this all-out revenge moment. So you really do get this very intimate look at her life through her clothing. And she was someone who was very emotionally intelligent. I believe she was really creative. And I think there's such a link between emotional intelligence and understanding the power of clothes and how to manipulate them according to what you want to say. So I think she was just kind of a pro at that.
I thought it was fascinating when I read in the book that for years, Diana never wore heels higher than 2 inches because she didn't want to be taller than Charles. And I actually have friends who did the same thing in their relationship. So I thought that was really interesting to learn about her. I'm wondering, what was the most surprising anecdote you learned about Diana while writing the book?
I think, to go to your point about the shoes, I love that because I think so many of us can relate to that, where you might be dating someone or you're meeting someone for the first time and you're like, God, are they going to be shorter than me? Should I wear flats? And I think it's this kind of thing that, just wear the pair of heels. Who cares? If they're going to be so emasculated by it, then you probably shouldn't be dating them. But anyway, the thing that I felt was the most surprising thing was that I really felt that she was quite in control and quite savvy from early on. And I think she, the way she's portrayed in a lot of, movie reenactments of her and any kind of biographies you read, and there's lots of, oh, she was very weak, she was very fragile. But when I did my research of her and just started kind of putting the tapes together, watching the videos, I actually think she was someone who was incredibly strong. And actually, you know, of course, she had naivety at first, but it had to become very wise really quickly. And I think, you know, if I compare myself to where I was in my mid-20s and where Diana was in her mid-20s, I think she wasn't half as kind of fragile or weak as people portrayed her. And I think there's this really kind of damaging assumption that because she was suffering from eating disorders, an eating disorder, because she was suffering from mental health problems, that made her weaker in some way. Or and I don't think it did. I think she was strong in spite of those things. And I think that goes for a lot of people suffering from mental health problems. Just because you suffer from them doesn't make you a weak person.
Yeah, absolutely. You write in the book, Princess or Not, she was just like us. And you just said something that made her very relatable and very much like a lot of us. Is that what fascinates you most about Diana, is that she was so much like us?
Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, people ask me all the time, especially since the book's come out, about which royal I'm writing about next. And I'm actually not a royal writer. I think the thing about Diana that really struck me was her story as a woman. I found it to be so profound and so full circle and so entirely relatable. And I think what's really interesting about her is she had this fascination with regular people and doing regular things. When she was dating Hasnat Khan, she liked to wash up his dishes. When she was before she officially joined the royal family, she was living at Coleherne Court with a few female roommates, and she'd pick up her friend's ironing and do his ironing for him. And then when she was in the public eye, she would love to zip around London, you know, kind of incognito, and jump in black taxis, sometimes take the bus and hope she'd go unspotted. And she had this real fascination with just like the regular man on the street or woman on the street. And I think her fascination is kind of countered with our fascination of her, where we're like, God, she really was so normal. And if you hear her speaking, I mean, there's just something about her that, like, I could imagine myself having a conversation with her because she just seems so normal, in inverted commas. And actually, one of the things I found super interesting in my research was every single designer that I spoke to that had actually met her or encountered her in some way all said the same thing, kind of without me even probing, was that when you first talked to her, within 5 minutes, you felt like you'd known her your whole life. Yeah. She just had a way of making people feel really at ease and really comfortable. And I think, you know, that is why we're so connected to her, because she's just so human.
That's so well said.
You have an Instagram, as you mentioned a minute ago, called Lady Di Revenge Looks, and that predates your book. So I want to go back to that and ask you, what made you decide to start the Instagram account covering these iconic looks?
So as I mentioned earlier, I was going through a marriage breakup when I was 25. So it was a pretty bad time for me. I got married super young, so I don't feel like I really had any real chance to kind of get to know myself. I moved from London to New York at quite a young age, and so I jumped into this new city, this new relationship. And when I came out of the other side of that relationship, and it was not a good relationship, I really didn't know who I was at all. I was working in fashion, but I really didn't know which area I wanted to be in. I just felt really lost. And I think when I speak to a lot of young women in their 20s, that seems to be kind of the general vibe, is, you know, if you know what you want to do in your mid-20s, you're lucky, you're one of the lucky ones. So I tried lots of different things, did a million different jobs, and then came across this documentary about Princess Diana called Diana in Her Own Words. And it's the one where it's narrated via her secret tapes that she recorded for Andrew Morton to inform his biography. So she did it secretly at the time. And I was just so enchanted by her. And that's the moment really where I was like, wow, she's really relatable. I actually, even though I'm British, of course, I knew Diana. I didn't actually really know Diana. I didn't know her story. I just knew that she was this famous princess figure in the British royal family that was really loved. And as I kind of uncovered the story, I was like, God, this is so relatable. And then obviously the Charles and Camilla thing came up, and I'm like, that is even more relatable. I definitely have had a Charles in my life. I've definitely had a Camilla in my life. And I think a lot of women have. And at the time, as I said, I've always worked in fashion. I come from a fashion family. My mum's a fashion designer, so I really grew up around it. And when I got out of my breakup, I just felt that clothes for me personally were this very soothing thing. And I, kind of dressed a bit sexier. And I think the intention at the beginning is like, I don't know, when you're 25, you want your ex to see a picture of you on Instagram looking great, Right. And it kind of occurred to me that once I watched this documentary and started doing more research and then it really was uncovering the outfits first, where I was like, whoa, it was kind of this big aha moment. And I realized that Diana definitely had her own revenge wardrobe. And I actually searched it on Instagram. I was like, this has to already exist, like revenge looks, Lady Di revenge looks, blah, blah, blah. And nothing came up. And I was so shocked. And it's really hard to imagine, kind of, this is like 4 years ago now, Instagram not really having any Diana content on there, because at the time it didn't. So for me, it was like uncovering this treasure chest of being like, this is crazy. So I started the account, Lady Di Revenge Looks, inspired in a way by my own breakup. And honestly, I had no intention of it going anywhere. I genuinely did it as a joke. And they were like, some of them were like slight digs at my own ex. And then all of a sudden, I have lots of friends who work in fashion in London. And one of my friends worked for another magazine, and she did kind of one article on it, and I swear to you, from there it just blew up, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. Then I got a book agent out of it who approached me. So for anyone who thinks, oh, I shouldn't start that Instagram account, it's silly, or like you think Instagram isn't kind of a real thing, it actually changed my life. Truly.
Yeah, and you as of this moment have 118,000 followers. So it's blown up. It's huge. And I love it. I mean, it's just Diana's, and we'll talk about this in a second, but Diana's like 1994 to 1997 looks are my favorite personally, Diana era. And I'm wondering if you were to break down a few top tips for revenge dressing, because let's say that some of our listeners are in that moment. They want to revenge dress right now. Yeah. First of all, what is revenge dressing and how do you pull it off?
Okay, so anyone can pull it off, because it's not, I think revenge dressing isn't a particular style. It's a way of dressing that makes you feel good about yourself and kind of, pushes your own boundaries a little bit. Or, I know plenty of people, luckily my ex wasn't like this, but I know plenty of people who've been in relationships where they say, oh, my ex didn't like me wearing this, or my ex didn't like me wearing that. Well, sorry, but fucking wear it. Put that outfit on. Put those shoes on. Oh, he felt insecure about you wearing high heels, wear them. And I think that's the overall vibe. It's kind of, I joke that revenge dressing is, to make them feel sorry that they ever did whatever they did for you. Or it could even be like an old boss. Everyone's had a horrible boss at a job where, I don't know, maybe you lost your job and you leave and your confidence is shattered and you want to rebuild your confidence. Well, get a nice new handbag, get something that makes you feel good about yourself. And, it's the expression, you got to fake it till you make it. And I think that is what's helped me get through things. Clothing has this way to transform your personal attitude towards yourself. And, you know, I'm not saying go out if you're broke and buy like an expensive handbag, but like if you do have a bit of money, treat yourself to something nice and don't feel guilty about it, because it's those little things that they're like your outward kind of, it's an outward reflection of who you are to the world. And I think that kind of reflects back inwards and makes you feel good. At least that's how I feel about clothing. I'm very passionate about how clothing can make you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have all experienced retail therapy before, and
Oh, yeah.
I like your point that it's the attitude behind the clothing. So that is definitely something to think about with revenge dressing. Speaking of, Diana wore the famous black revenge dress in 1994, and you write that was a turning point for her style from then until her death in 1997. So, can you explain what you mean by that? You've talked a little bit about the attitude behind the revenge dress, but what you mean by her turning point in her style?
Well, I think that was the first time we had ever seen Diana step out in kind of a mini dress per se. With, if you actually dissect the outfit, and I obviously do it in the book, but if you break it down, you have this mini dress with an off the shoulder sweetheart neckline, very sexy. She's kind of got her strong stoic shoulders, which says so much in itself. It's a dress, it's black. Black's an illegal color because it was for royals, you only wore it to a funeral or, you know, when you're in mourning. And it has this mini train behind it, which if you actually, to me, it's kind of, it's like the top slice of the sandwich. If you compare it to her wedding dress, which was a 25-foot long train, to this dress, which is kind of sleek, minimal, and it has a mini train, it's almost kind of like, this is my divorce dress. This is my, you know, big FU dress.
Mm-hmm.
And also the designer behind it's really important, because she always wore British, or for the most part, Diana always wore British throughout the night, unless she was kind of on a tour, and occasionally she'd wear a few foreign designers, but for the most part, it was really British designers. So to this event, she wore a really kind of slightly unknown Greek designer called Christina Stambolian, who really, you know, didn't have the largest presence. So she chose this small designer, not British, Greek. She wore a pair of Manolo Blahnik shoes, which Manolo Blahnik notoriously have been famous, you know, for producing. He produced the most sexy shoes in the world, along with Jimmy Choo. It's Manolo Blahnik, Jimmy Choo. Mm-hmm. She wore red nail polish. Again, royals don't wear red nail polish. Totally illegal color, because it was seen as vampy and sexy and kind of, I'm sure in the olden days, a bit like, you know, hoey. I couldn't think of like a nicer way to put it, but yeah, that was, I guess, how they perceived it to be. But then she's wearing this choker that, you know, if you're a fan of Diana and the royal family, you'll recognize it because she wore it so much in the 80s and 90s. And it's a pearl choker with a diamond encrusted sapphire, and it was actually gifted to her by her mother-in-law, who she had a very contentious relationship with. So no, not her mother-in-law, the queen mother. So
her grandmother-in-law.
Exactly. And that is the only thing on her body, including her haircut, which is also new and like very sexy and had the Sam McKnight effect, her hairstylist. That is the only thing she is wearing that is kind of almost like a relic of her past life. And she's wearing it, in my opinion, as a badge of honor to say, you know, I'm still royal and I'm not going anywhere, and you can't get rid of me that easily. And of course, she wore it the same night, which most people know, but in case you don't, she wore it the same night that a documentary aired on British television, which was kind of Prince Charles's moment to rebrand after he'd had terrible press. These secret recordings were linked with Camilla Parker Bowles that was super graphic, and you know, I don't know if you've heard
just
of tampon.
Beyond gross, honestly.
Beyond gross, like no one wants to hear about him wanting to pull her tampon out with his teeth.
I don't even want to hear that from the man I'm in love with. Like, that's not sexy to me at all.
It's kind of foul, and like definitely no one wants to hear it from them.
No.
Like, I don't know what you're into, but no one wants to hear it from them.
Right.
And so this was his moment to sit down on TV with this veteran television presenter, Jonathan Dimbleby, and say, you know what, I'm going to come clean. Yes, I did cheat on Diana, but only when the marriage had kind of irretrievably broken down. And she obviously knew, because Diana was very calculated. She obviously knew that was coming out that night. And one of the biggest things that, you know, pissed him off the most was when she'd steal the newspaper headlines the next day. And this really was his moment. I think the documentary was about all of his like environmental endeavors, I'm sure his gardening, whatever, but like it was so much more to the documentary, but of course that didn't matter. And after she stepped out wearing this dress, and that's it, when it was coined the revenge dress, because it was so evident what she was doing, and it worked. And people, I think from that moment, it was that go girl moment. I think every time you ever hear, you know, when you like, I know it's terrible, but when you sometimes hear in the press that someone has cheated on their like prominent or famous partner, and it almost makes you like the partner or the woman more, because it's like this girl power. We all know what that feels like, and you almost want to come together and like protect that person. And I think everyone kind of simultaneously had that with Diana. And apparently Camilla was seen in the supermarket like a few days later, and someone actually started pelting her with bread rolls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I don't know if I remembered that anecdote.
yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know. I mean, I have so many thoughts, but she looked phenomenal. I mean, we can't deny that look was a turning point. And, you know, listeners, if for whatever reason you don't know what look we're talking about, first of all, pick up the book, but also Google this, and just Google Diana Revenge Dress. Go to the Instagram account and you'll see it. And it's a knockout look. And, you know, I told you a moment ago that my favorite era in Diana fashion was right around that time. Maybe I would say right around 1994, 1995 until the end of her life in 1997. I'm wondering what era in Diana fashion was your favorite, because you cover not just 1994 to 1997 in the book. You cover the whole swath.
Yeah, no, I really go through like every single era and I pick out the best looks. Okay, so I have a few favorites. I really love her polo field outfits that she wore in the 80s. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's because I'm British, so I obviously grew up with some of like these trends and like the really cute sort of sweaters, like the country cottage core sweaters and all of that. I really love those, and I feel like she pulled them off, you know, kind of just really well. And I like the color, and I loved her androgynous looks from the 80s too. I just think they're so cool and actually, you know, kind of badass. I think in a way she was so tired of people dissecting her body and, you know, dissecting her outfits. It almost makes you wonder, did she put on the clothing of a man to kind of try and embody that power, the power that men just kind of inherit at birth, you know, simply because of their anatomy is different. So I kind of thought about it from that perspective, and just, I love an androgynous outfit. I just think they're really cool. And then obviously the 90s, I'd say the last 2 years of her life, I think she just really found herself as a woman and her style too. And I think that happens, you know, as you get a bit older. I think your 20s are for experimenting and figuring out what works and what you like. And then I definitely know that, I mean, I turned 30 this year, and I definitely feel like I found, you know, my style now. And I know I can't imagine it changing that much over the next 10 years, but where 10 years ago, it's like, oh my God, like my style's changed so much in that period. So I think by 1996, 1997, she just really developed this very international look, and she loved Italian designers, American designers, and she just looked really current and fresh. And those are the pictures I look back at the most and say I would wear that and I actually wouldn't change anything about it, which I think says a lot, you know.
So we've talked about your favorite era in Diana fashion, and you've covered a lot of the general looks that you really like. Do you think it's possible for you to narrow down 2 or 3 specific outfits in the book that just really stand out to you?
It's hard for me to do, but yes. I really love Diana's white Versace mini dress, her little WD
Mm-hmm.
that she wore, I think it was in around 1996. And it was just kind of white, I think obviously just stands for women's liberation historically. And she's showing decolletage and she's showing thighs. She's like bearing all, and it's just super clean, super minimal. And it's the antithesis of her outfits in the early 80s. And I think, it's such a statement stepping out in the world's sexiest brand. So I love that one for that reason. I really love this, like everyone, I love the sportswear looks. And there's one particular one where she's wearing an ankle length red coat and must be in the autumn or something in England. And some kind of chunky white sneakers, some Reebok socks, and just some really like super short cycling shorts, oversized sweatshirt and a scarf. And she just looks so fresh and current. And again, that's something I would actually wear in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think my final choice, let me think, is, you know what? I'm gonna go with it's maybe boring, but I'm gonna go with the revenge dress, the classic revenge dress, just because it really is a moment that just says it defined an era for her and for like women everywhere. And there's something very powerful about this one dress that people still go back to time and time again.
I don't disagree with that choice. I don't disagree with any of those choices. Actually. I have, and by the way, I want to point out when you were talking about the androgynous looks, I love the way that you framed that, because you said I'm the girl that was supposed to be a boy. Because in her family, anybody that knows Diana's story, she had 2 older sisters. They were hoping for a boy, right, to carry on the family lineage. Of course, she's born. Well, and I can't remember if there was a there either. I think there was a boy, but he died. He passed away. And then there was Diana. And then, of course, there was Charles, and there was the boy. But I love how you tied that all in there. I just thought that was brilliant. I just wanted to point that out, call that out. But flash forward to the present, we see Kate all the time, in particular, channeling Diana's fashion so much, even to, this week, even. So how intentional do you think this is?
I think it's very intentional. I mean, I think it's a way of showing respect, and keeping her legacy alive. Obviously, William and Harry both, love their mother a lot. And I think, the princes have always said it's really important that their kids, remember their grandmother. And I definitely think there's something very touching and sweet about, Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle both, paying tribute to her. I also think both of them definitely have the help of stylists. So I think the stylists probably do a lot of the research too, and that's at least my hunch. But yeah, no, I think it's a nice tribute, and I think people appreciate it.
So we've got one more question for you. I just have to say, I love this book. I'm actually flipping through it as we're talking right now, and there are so many photos of Princess Diana that I personally had not seen before I got this book. So I just want to know, what do you hope readers ultimately get out of this really beautiful book?
I hope they see, what I really tried to do with this story is kind of tell Diana's story from a side that I would hope that she would want it to be told, because I think there are so many kind of male interpretations of Diana's story. I'm sure, I mean, of course, the movie Spencer, it was directed by a man, and it has a very kind of, I felt like it had a really backwards approach to any kind of, of the of what it meant to be a woman in that situation. So I wasn't a fan of it. And I think all the, renderings we have of Diana, they just didn't feel fair. So what I really wanted to do was kind of get to know her and put that to paper and show, some of her sense of humor, explain why she is still so inspiring to so many women, and so many women who also weren't necessarily were too young to really know her. And so I really hope people get kind of this intimate view into her life, and see what a feminist she was, and also just to kind of inspire you to be braver and bolder with your clothing choices. And just I think Diana's like a great guide for all of us to kind of put yourself first and use clothing to express yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here today. The Lady Di lookbook, what Diana was trying to tell us through her clothes, is out now. You'll know it from this like electric yellow and pink cover. It's perfect for your coffee table. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, she was a blast, and I feel like we say this about all of our guests. Maybe that's just because we bring really good guests on, but I could have talked to her for hours. She's fascinating, and the book is phenomenal. It is one of the most gorgeous books I own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned this in the interview with her, but there are a lot of photos in the book that I had not seen before. So a really good reason to go get the book and flip through it if you want to see some maybe new photos of Princess Diana that you've not seen. And also, honestly, it's just a really good book for some fashion inspiration.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of styles from the 90s kind of making a comeback recently, I feel like. And so, if you're looking to freshen up your wardrobe, you may get inspired by some of Princess Diana's looks. So
yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, definitely go grab it. It's out now. Listeners, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Podcast Royal. Email us at hellopodcastroyal@gmail.com, and please follow, rate, and review our podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 67 of Podcast Royal. Bye.
Bye, and check in on your loved ones.